It was Friday, the 13th of September, 1985. The late summer air hung thick and humid over the dense woods of Crystal Lake, and the sun had just set behind the hills. The once bustling camp was now a place shrouded in fear and silence, the haunting legacy of Jason Voorhees lingering like a dark cloud. Though the camp had been officially abandoned years earlier, rumors still swirled among the locals, stories of the killer who stalked the woods, his hulking figure and hockey mask striking terror in the hearts of anyone foolish enough to wander too close. That night, a different kind of predator prowled the forest. Far from any human settlement, in the deep wilderness beyond the lake, a creature moved silently through the trees. It stood nearly 8 feet tall, its body covered in thick, matted fur. It was Bigfoot, the elusive beast of legend that had roamed the forests for centuries, unseen by most and feared by those who knew the truth. Bigfoot had wandered these forests for years, avoiding human contact, retreating to the high mountains when the heat of summer brought campers and hikers into his territory. But this summer had been different. The woods felt wrong, tainted by a malevolent presence that even Bigfoot, ancient and powerful, could sense. He had kept his distance for as long as possible, but tonight something drew him toward Crystal Lake, something primal and threatening. The beast had felt it in his bones, a dark energy emanating from the lake, and he knew instinctively that whatever was causing it needed to be confronted. As Bigfoot neared the lake, the woods became unnaturally quiet. The usual symphony of crickets and frogs had fallen silent, and even the wind seemed to hold its breath. The giant paused at the edge of the clearing, his deep-set eyes scanning the horizon. In the distance, the decaying cabins of Camp Crystal Lake stood like skeletal remnants of a forgotten era. The air was thick with an unnatural tension, and Bigfoot could feel the weight of another presence nearby. A soft ripple disturbed the surface of the lake, and Bigfoot's keen senses picked up the sound of movement, a slow, deliberate step, as if something massive and menacing was making its way through the trees. He turned toward the sound, his massive body crouching low, muscles tensing in preparation for whatever was approaching. Then, from the darkness, Jason Voorhees emerged. Jason Voorhees, the legendary killer of Camp Crystal Lake, moved with a purpose. His massive figure was cloaked in shadow, the familiar hockey mask covering his deformed face, while a blood-stained machete hung loosely in his hand. He was drawn to the lake, just as Bigfoot had been, though his purpose was far more sinister. Jason had spent decades stalking and slaughtering those who dared to enter his territory. This was his home, his cursed domain, and nothing would stand between him and his endless thirst for vengeance. But tonight, Jason sensed something different. This was not a foolish teenager or a wayward camper. The presence he felt in the woods was something ancient, something powerful. He could feel it in the air, a primal energy that called to the killer in him. Jason stopped at the edge of the clearing, his cold, dead eyes locking onto the massive form of Bigfoot standing in the moonlight. For a long moment, neither creature moved. The killer and the beast sized each other up, two forces of nature poised on the brink of an inevitable clash. Then, with a sudden burst of speed, Jason charged. Bigfoot saw the attack coming and reacted instinctively. With a roar that echoed through the trees, the massive creature lunged forward, meeting Jason's charge head-on. The ground trembled beneath their feet as they collided, a brutal clash of raw power and unrelenting force. Bigfoot's huge arms swung down, aiming to crush Jason with a single blow, but the masked killer was faster than he appeared. He dodged to the side at the last second, bringing his machete down in a vicious arc. The blade sliced through the air and found its mark, cutting deep into Bigfoot's shoulder. The beast howled in pain, staggering back as blood flowed from the wound. But if Jason thought the fight would be easy, he was mistaken. With a snarl of fury, Bigfoot swung his massive arm again, this time connecting with Jason's torso. The force of the blow sent the killer flying backward, crashing into a nearby tree with enough force to splinter the trunk. Jason dropped to the ground, momentarily stunned by the impact. Bigfoot didn't hesitate. He charged forward, using his immense strength to slam into Jason's prone body. The ground shook beneath the weight of their struggle as the two titans grappled in the dirt, trading blows that would have killed any ordinary man. Jason's machete flashed again, cutting into Bigfoot's flesh, but the beast's fury only grew. With a roar, Bigfoot grabbed Jason by the throat, lifting him off the ground with terrifying ease. The killer flailed, his machete slipping from his grip as Bigfoot slammed him into the ground again and again, each impact leaving a crater in the dirt. But Jason Voorhees was no ordinary man. Even as Bigfoot's attacks pummeled his body, Jason's undead resilience allowed him to keep moving. His hand shot out, grabbing a nearby rock, and he swung it with all his might into Bigfoot's face. The blow staggered the beast, and Jason used the moment to wrench himself free, rolling to his feet in a fluid motion. He retrieved his machete and stalked toward Bigfoot, his movements slow and deliberate. The fight was far from over. The moon cast an eerie glow over the battlefield as Jason and Bigfoot circled each other, both creatures wounded but unrelenting. Blood dripped from Bigfoot's fur, staining the ground beneath him, while Jason's tattered clothes clung to his battered frame. Despite their injuries, neither showed any sign of retreat. Bigfoot's breath came in ragged gasps, but his eyes burned with fury. He had never faced an opponent like this, a creature that refused to die, no matter how many times he struck it down. But Bigfoot was a survivor, and he would not allow this masked killer to claim his life. With a deep growl, Bigfoot charged again, his massive hands outstretched to grab Jason and crush him once and for all. But Jason was ready. As Bigfoot closed in, Jason swung his machete in a wide arc, aiming for the beast's neck. The blade bit into Bigfoot's flesh, but the beast's momentum carried him forward, and he slammed into Jason with enough force to send both of them crashing to the ground. The two creatures grappled in the dirt, each trying to overpower the other. Jason's machete flashed in the moonlight, but Bigfoot's powerful hands closed around his wrists, pinning him to the ground. With a snarl, Bigfoot lifted Jason and hurled him across the clearing, sending the killer crashing into the remains of an old cabin. Jason lay still for a moment, his body broken and battered. But even now, the dark magic that kept him alive stirred within him, and slowly, he began to rise. Bigfoot watched in disbelief as Jason stood once again, his body twisted and broken, but still moving. The beast let out a roar of frustration, knowing that this fight would not end until one of them was dead. Jason advanced on Bigfoot, his machete raised for the killing blow. But this time, Bigfoot was ready. As Jason swung the blade, Bigfoot dodged to the side, grabbing a large branch from the ground. With a mighty swing, he brought the branch down on Jason's arm, knocking the machete from his hand. Jason stumbled back, momentarily disarmed, and Bigfoot took his chance. He lunged forward, grabbing Jason by the neck and lifting him off the ground. With a roar of fury, Bigfoot hurled Jason into the lake, sending the killer crashing into the water with a tremendous splash. For a moment, the lake was still, and Bigfoot stood at the water's edge, his chest heaving with exhaustion. But then, from the depths of the lake, Jason emerged once again, his mask still in place, his machete back in his hand. Bigfoot knew that this battle would never end. Jason Voorhees was a force of nature, an unstoppable killer who could not be defeated by ordinary means. But Bigfoot was no ordinary creature, and he had one final trick up his sleeve. As Jason advanced, Bigfoot let out a low growl and retreated into the forest. Jason followed, his machete raised, but Bigfoot was faster. He led Jason deep into the woods, to a place where the trees grew thick and the ground was treacherous. Then, with a mighty roar, Bigfoot sprang from the shadows, using all his strength to tackle Jason and send them both tumbling down a steep ravine. The ground gave way beneath them, and they fell together into the darkness. The next morning, the forest was silent once again. The sun rose over Crystal Lake, casting a golden light over the still water. But there was no sign of Jason Voorhees or the creature known as Bigfoot. The battle between the two titans had ended in a stalemate, with both creatures vanishing into the wilderness. Some say that Jason still stalks the woods of Crystal Lake, his machete ever ready for the next victim. Others believe that Bigfoot returned to the mountains.